you. Thank you, Terry, for those very kind comments, and welcome, intrepid travelers. Can you hear me? I think you can hear me without a microphone, huh? Is this better? Well, thank you very much for coming out in cold sub-zero weather like this. We're going to visit we're going to visit Siberia tonight. We're also going to visit some very tropical places as well. So I am delighted to be able to take you on a world travel tonight that will embrace 25 countries around the world on 6 continents. And the subtext of all of this was the journey to sacred places on 6 continents. Because those of you who have traveled extensively, or not even extensively, realize that the greatest of architectural gems are those that relate to things that are sacred, regardless of the religious persuasion of where you are. And it seems that men and women have built upon their beliefs, so we'll be visiting those great sacred places in these countries. Just a little bit about me. Some of you have asked, well, how come you've done so much traveling? Well, I've traveled over 4 million air miles. That's the equivalent of 8 times around the trip to the moon, or 200 times around the equator. My father worked for American Airlines when I was a young man, so we were introduced to travel early on. I went to Northwestern. I was a teacher at one time, music director at Kenilworth, and then I got into the book business. And as a result of that, I became the director of sales for Time Life Books in Asia. You're familiar with Time Life Books, I presume. And I had lived for years in Singapore. I lived for years in Hong Kong. I lived in Sydney, Australia. I had lived in Honolulu. I lived right on the beach in Honolulu, and I went to the beach 1 time in 6 years. That's perverse, isn't it? But when you live in a place, you have to deal with it in a different fashion than when you're traveling. You leave your troubles behind. Then I lived in England as well. I was very fortunate to be able to make friends out of my colleagues in these countries that I visited. And since I was a businessman, I was able to direct my own schedule, and my boss said, just get her done, Bill. So I was able to have a lot of free time in my schedule, and my colleagues would take me to the internal places of China, Russia, Siberia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, places that truly are off the beaten path, remote areas, and it will be literally impossible to go to today, many of them, and certainly not even the most intrepid travelers could find many of these places because you need to have some type of a guide to get you there. Having said that, I've never taken a tour as such. I've always either traveled alone or with one friend or with some type of a guide which maximizes your experiences and your choices. I've always felt that if you're forced to take a tour, it kind of neuters the experience, if I can say that. Now, one of my great friends here is my suitcase. My suitcase is well traveled. It's traveled over 2 million miles with me. It's traveled over 80 countries. And you can see some of the stamps right here. It's still in fine working condition. My Samsonite fell apart literally after 1 million miles. But this one here, I think I'm going to donate to the Smithsonian Museum someday in the future when I finally decide to retire. So we'll have a chance to have questions and answers after my program tonight. We're traveling first class. We're going to travel about 30,000 miles. We're going to go in an easterly direction primarily, but there will be some north and south. And so strap yourselves in. We're taking your drink orders and your food orders in a few minutes, huh? And prepare to have a wonderful evening, and I'm glad that you're all here tonight. Enjoy the trip.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So we're going to start by traveling all the way to, here we go. We're going to travel all the way here to, just 1 second, to Oak Park, Illinois. And I mentioned many of you have seen and been in the famous Frank Lloyd Wright Unity Temple. It was completed in the year 1904. While it looks like a bunker from the outside, on the inside it has that spiritual quality without any religious icons whatsoever. It is truly a magnificent place which one continues to visit time and time and time again. Now from Oak Park we're traveling south to northern Arkansas. I was a hillbilly at one time in my lifetime, And what we're seeing right here is the Thorn Crown Chapel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, embedded in the forest. And what you'll notice about it is that it has glass walls in the front and the back of the church. So it's a see-through church. The walls right here and the roof you can check on. But I call it God's greenhouse because when you go inside, you're definitely going to be growing spiritually. From here now, we're traveling all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, and some of you may recognize this as southern Spain, the Al-Andalus. And this is the Alhambra. And the Alhambra was a creation of that unique period in history when the Islamic Muslims called the Moors embraced the Christians and the Jews in this enlightened period from about 800 to 1400 AD, while the rest of Europe was in a dark age. They did splendid works, and the Alhambra here literally was completed in the year 1236 AD, one of my most favorite places in the world to visit. Inside, the poetry literally is written in stone, and it creates just a magical spell. Now from here, folks, we're going to northern France. It was one of those days where it was kind of cloudy and stormy up on top. This is a Normandy invasion. The result is, of course, the cemetery. And it was just 81 years after this experience, or before this experience from 1944, when Abraham Lincoln traveled to Gettysburg to dedicate the national battlefield there, and he said those immortal words, these men gave the last full measure of their devotion, and indeed they did. From here, you'll all recognize this as Pisa. Okay. The Italians call the tower a campanile. It was completed in the year 1055 AD of Romanesque architecture, and when it was completed, the campanile started to literally to lean immediately. But if we can all put our lives together and push in the direction to your left over here, we're going to find that you can indeed straighten up the good old Tower of Pisa, can't you? All right. Well, from here, we're going to Venezia, Venice, the glorious St. Mark's Cathedral, San Marco. Of course, you have to deal with the pigeons before you get inside. It was completed about the same year that Pisa was, but its architectural influence, of course, is Byzantine. It looks towards the east rather than towards the west. And St. Mark's bones himself from the Bible are in the crypt of St. Mark's. They were delivered from Alexandria, Egypt, near 828 AD. So it is a glorious, glorious place. From here, we're going south in Italy, of course, to Firenze, Florence. This is the David, of course, by Michelangelo, completed in the year 1504 AD. We're told that, though this is not his favorite statue or sculpture, his favorite, we're told, is the Moses in the St. Paul of Chains in Rome, which is just a few hundred yards from the Roman Forum. You'll recognize this as the 3 coins in a fountain. Remember the movie? Oh, yeah. This is the Fountain of Trevi, huh? Where the glorious statues here, of course, are poured over by the wonderful water. Truly a magnanimous place and one which is glorious to see. Not far in Rome also is the Pantheon, the best preserved of all the old Roman antiquity buildings, completed in the year 121 AD. The rotunda back here, if you've seen it, is just a synthesis of design and detail and architectural brilliance. It is breathtaking when you walk inside. One of my favorite pictures here is this older gentleman. He likes to read. To me, this is a sacred activity. He's sitting on the steps of the Roman Forum. Look at the size of his feet. Aren't they whoppers, huh? Okay. Now we're going to Vienna. And one of the 2 patron saints of classical music, of course, is Ludwig van Beethoven. And not far from this statue is his compatriot, older by 14 years, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. And you recognize the treble clef here written in flowers. Now, when Mozart was my age, he'd already been dead for 30 years. So, go figure, huh? Okay. From here we go a little north up to the glorious city, the Baroque city of Prague, huh? And this is the St. Nicholas Church, completed in the 17th century of Baroque architecture. This is of course, named after the jolly old St. Nicholas, ho, ho, ho. And do you happen to know when St. Nicholas was born and where? Anybody have an idea? I always thought, yeah, Germany, 1600. He was born in Turkey in the year 282 A.D. He didn't become Santa Claus as we know him until the 1800s in New York City. You'll notice here, although the Don Giovanni, one of the great Mozartian operas, it was premiered in Prague in 1787 by Mozart. Okay. Now we come to the sensitive city of Amsterdam, and this is the Anne Frank house. This is where she and her family hid from the Nazis for 2 years during the World War II. They were eventually found, transported by train to Auschwitz, Poland. She died not in the gas chambers, but of typhoid fever. Thank God her father found the diary. He lived until the 1970s. We now go to Bucharest, Romania. I was on a Danube River cruise, and this was a Sunday morning when the priests and their resplendent refinement here were on a mission and marched out to the church. Now you'll recognize this. I'm going to imagine many of you. We are in Santorini. You ever seen the picture of this church before? Huh? Well, you'll recognize the church from another angle at sunset when it looks like this. Okay? Isn't that beautiful? You have the bell towers here, of course, the cross, and the gorgeous golden braids of the Aegean Sea. I took all these pictures myself. You're seeing here a composite, of course, of several trips. It took over a period of years. The bad pictures are still in the shoebox under the bed at home. Huh? Okay. Now from here we go back to Greece, the Oracle of Delphi. In the background is a famous sacred mountain called Mount Parnassus. We travel a couple hundred miles to the glorious city of Istanbul, and of course you'll recognize this as the Saint Sophia, or the Hagia Sophia, built by the Emperor Justinian in the year 517 A.D. It's probably the largest church structure in the world, including St. Peter's. When the Muslims came in 1453, they built the minarets, and it's where the man called the Muezzin climbs the stairs to the balcony, and he says, "It is time to pray." 5 times a day, and the Muslim men and women faithfully pray 5 times a day. It has the world's largest unsupported dome, larger than St. Peter's in Rome or larger than St. Paul's, Christopher Wren's creation, in London. So it became an Islamic mosque, and now it is, effective about 100 years ago, is now a wonderful museum. Inside, the space is just magisterial. It just is gripping in its sentiment and its beauty. Now from here, we travel to Jerusalem. And this is the Dome of the Rock. It is a sacred place, although it is an Islamic site. It was built in the year 688 in honor of Muhammad, the prophet. This was the site where Solomon built his first temple in 900 BC. It's also the site where Abraham was said to have was going to sacrifice his son Isaac when God said, "No, let him live." So it's filled with architectural history. Although the dome itself initially was made of copper, King Hussein of Jordan clothed it in gold in the 1980s. Not far away, of course, is the famous Wailing Wall, the Western Wall. It's a retaining wall. This is the most sacred site in all of Judaism. On top is the Temple Mount, and that is where Solomon's temple was initially built, and where the second temple was destroyed about, I think, 70 A.D. by the Romans. Now from here, we're traveling to a glorious city of chaos and cacophony and wonderment called Cairo. 20 million people live in Cairo. It is just a glorious place. Now, let me show you a couple of things about it here. Cairo has an opera house. The opera house was built by the Japanese, the 1980s, with Japanese money. Now, I saw an opera here a few years ago in this opera house, It was composed by the little old man from Brooklyn called Joe Green. He's better known, of course, as Giuseppe Verdi, and the opera was Il Trovatore. Ever been on a camel before? Right. Nasty things. They don't want you on their back. They bite, they spit, but if I took the trip, of course, around the pyramids at this point, and this, as you recognize, of course, is King Tut, his tomb. And you also remember that he was here at the Field Museum in Chicago for several months, just up until early January. He lays currently and permanently at the Egypt Museum in Cairo. Okay. From here, we are going to the glorious pyramids, the Giza pyramids, and the Khufu pyramid for 43 centuries was the world's tallest man-made object until 1889 when the Eiffel Tower was built in Paris. In Cairo, this is the tomb of Mohammad Pahlavi, the Shah of Iran. You recall the Iranian Revolution in 1979, and although he is a Shiite Muslim, the Sunni Muslims of Cairo bonded together and buried him in a spirit of Islamic unity. I wander around a lot. I always took a cup of coffee early in the morning. I wandered with my camera. I discovered in central Cairo this glorious old synagogue. It's centuries old, and it's still in use. There's still a Judaic population, a community in Cairo, which continues to function. Not far from there, again, to further explain the sense of religious toleration, is a Coptic Christian church on a beautiful Sunday morning. From here, we're going to take a temporary trip down to Abu Simbel. We're in Upper Egypt. And you who are historians may recall that it was originally built on the Nile River. Now, when the Aswan Dam was built and the Lake Nasser rose, they had to raise Abu Simbel nearly 300 feet. They literally cut all this apart, recomposed it on a ledge. The mountain in back of here was built by the Germans in the 1980s. It is a hollow mountain. Quite an architectural treasure. Back in Cairo, I stayed at the Cairo Hilton when I traveled quite a bit, and this is the beautiful brown Nile right down here. Okay, so from Cairo in Egypt, we're going to travel north to Russia. Okay, you'll recognize this as the Kremlin, built and completed around the year 1100 AD. We're in Moscow, and not far from the Kremlin, across Red Square, is the glorious St. Basil's Cathedral, built in the year 1555 AD by Ivan the Terrible in recognition of this successful battle with the Muslims in Kazan, an area about 300 miles east of Moscow. Not far from Moscow is the Sergeyev Monastery, completed in the year 1345 AD. You'll recognize the Russian domes right here, just really resplendent and glorious. And in the same grounds is a tomb of Boris Godunov, that famous Russian general. Look at the horrible circumstances in which he is buried. Just too bad. Back in Moscow on Arbat Street, what are we seeing here? What do you think these guys are doing? They're the Hare Krishnas. Huh? And in 1991, when Russia acquired all of its new lifestyles, then religion and the freedom of assembly were permitted. The freedoms, of course, and these guys are chanting and beating their tom-toms and wailing up a storm. Quite interesting. Now, we're in central Siberia here. I took the Trans-Siberian Railroad from Beijing through Mongolia, Siberia into Russia. It was 6,000 miles, 6 days, all by myself. Didn't speak one word of Russian, but somehow you make it through. And I discovered this glorious little church that has obviously a Grecian type of an architectural influence somewhere in central Siberia. From here, we're going to go to the warm climates. All of a sudden, now we're in the middle of the Indian Ocean. We're in Mauritius. Mauritius is similar in many ways to Honolulu in size and population. It has been visited for centuries by the colonial powers from Europe. So the children in Mauritius speak fluently Urdu from Pakistan. They speak fluently Hindi from India, Afrikaans from South Africa. They speak French, the official language. They speak English. They speak some Italian and German, and also a Pig Latin type of language as well. And remember the dodo bird? Okay, the last dodo bird in the planet Earth died in Mauritius in the year 1768. Okay, this is Mauritius, early morning. This gentleman here, this Muslim gentleman, is saying his prayers on the beach, but he is too feeble to put his head down, so of course he's permitted to stand. Now from Mauritius, we're traveling north a little bit, and we're going to come to Oman. Oman is a sultanate on the Saudi Arabian peninsula. This lady here, Muslim, she's from Ethiopia. She married her first cousin, has 5 children by him. The lady here, another colleague and friend, is from Pakistan. As we get into Oman, the interior is very remote. It's very desert-like. This is called Nizwa. This glorious mosque was built well over 1,000 years ago. Now, what would you expect to hear in terms of music if you went to Oman? You know what you hear? In the morning from 6 o'clock a.m. until noon every day, da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum. The Sultan of Oman was educated in the Western universities. He loves Western classical music, so by decree, the official station only plays Beethoven, Schubert, Brahms, Wagner, and Tchaikovsky, huh? Okay, we should be so lucky, right? Okay. Now from here, we're going to travel north a little bit, and we're going to visit Pakistan. And in Pakistan, you see these weird, wonderful trucks. They're literally nightmares, but they're all full of reflectors and crazy things. And now we are in the glorious Mughal city of Lahore. This is the Bad Mahi Mosque, built in the middle 1600s. I'm in the courtyard, and which holds well over 100,000 people. And inside the mosque is this irreplaceable Quran, the Holy Quran from the Islamic faith. It is written in Islamic script, and the ink is 100% pure gold. How about that, huh? Now, this is a scene you won't see, and it's probably difficult and impossible to get to these days. I am in northern Pakistan, on the Karakoram Mountains, and we encounter my guide is a Pakistani fellow, and it's just he and I traveling on the lone mountain roads alone. It's all inhabited by Al-Qaeda today. It would be suicidal to attempt this trip. These are mountain children that are going to school. They're all boys. Girls in Pakistan, unless you're wealthy or upper middle class, are illiterate. So 80 million Pakistanis cannot read or write, and which is so unfortunate. These boys go to school until they're 12 years of age. They learn the basics. There's no iPods. There's no electricity. We're up about 13,000 feet right here. And these are the faculty. The gentleman right here is the principal of the school. Okay. While we're in Pakistan, again, we encountered this tribal nomadic group. They live in tents all their lives. They feed their flocks all their lives. They go from pasture to pasture to pasture. They go from 12 to 16,000 feet. The boys and girls are all brothers and sisters and cousins. Look how beautifully they're dressed. And of course, they have modern Nikes, don't they, huh? They fed us just a wonderful lamb stew. Again, you're not going to find this on the tour bus. And this is one of the blessings that I had, me able to travel alone and be able to pick where and who I wanted to go with. We did some amazing discoveries. Yes. Now, have you ever been in an army zone before, a war zone? If you, of course, were in the army, obviously the answer is yes. But I am here in Kashmir on the Pakistani side. We're at 10,000 feet. The gentleman right here is a Pakistani army sergeant. The bombs are dropping, the shells are exploding because the Indians and the Pakistanis have been fighting each other since 1947 to try to claim this area, which is part officially of India right here. So we were up there for several hours, but it was a scary situation. Thank God we got out alive. You're seeing here in northern Pakistan this glorious situated city called Muzaffarabad. A river runs through it, as you can see, and of course the terraces have been there for centuries old. Just 2 years ago, a devastating earthquake came through this region and devastated Muzaffarabad. 50,000 people were killed within seconds, and tens of thousands of others. There was no road to escape. There was no army. There was no Red Cross. So they either starved or for lack of medical help, perished. It was a human tragedy of a monumental nature, but I saw the city when it was in its glorious prime. Now, you've seen a lot of mountains. I'll tell you, the most glorious mountains in the world that you can see without being a mountain climber are the Karakorams. I'm on the Karakoram Highway here on the way to western China, and this mountain is called Rakaposhi. Isn't that a great name? And Rakaposhi is a sacred mountain. The tallest mountain in the United States comes to about right here. Rakaposhi is 26,000 feet tall and just glorious in every dimension. Now, the encounters along the road are just wonderful. Serendipity is a great thing. We were in a car on this mountain road path, and we encountered just by accident this nomadic family, and this gentleman right here looks like he's right out of Central Casting, right? And he's carrying a little baby lamb just born that's too weak to walk. A very sensitive encounter and one of those blessings that I am so thankful for. Now we've come down to India. We're in Mumbai, which is the former Bombay harbor. Buddha was born in India in an area called Varanasi, I believe, about 543 BC. And Buddhism hung on in India until about 700 AD. I was in a boat just like this. Now, folks, that was a religious experience, okay? And we're on our way to Elephanta Island in the harbor here. And what happened 2,000 years ago is that the Buddhists tunneled underneath the granite mountain using the most simple of tools, and they created these glorious, magnanimous Buddha statues. Some of them 25 feet high. We're inside the mountain a half a mile. It's incredible here. And so many of the Buddhist treasures around the world are in the most remote locations. When you go to Bombay, and God willing you will someday, you must go to Elephanta. Truly, it is a holy place. Now, this is a typical city in India. This is a typical street scene. You have bicycles, you have motorcycles, a couple of cars, and when someone calls you and says your American Express card is overdue, it probably comes from a city just like this in India. Okay, all right. You'll recognize this naturally as the Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal is in Agra, about a 4-hour car drive southeast of New Delhi in northern India. It was completed in about the year 1648, I believe. It is a tomb. The Emperor Shah Jahan built it for his wife, Mumtaz Mahal, and her remains are contained herein. Mumtaz Mahal died at 39 years of age, bearing her 14th child. Wow, huh? It took 20,000 people 20 years to complete the Taj Mahal. The minarets here are built slightly outward, so if there is an earthquake, they will not implode upon the major building itself. Also, the entrance to the Taj Mahal, built in sandstone here, the filigree, the decorative artwork is just incomprehensible. Even when you see it, you say, how could they ever do it? Quite magnanimous. Now, cows are sacred in India. They're venerated. They're gods. And this was obviously a cow holiday that I encountered. And I am here with you in Mumbai, Bombay. I was staying at the Oberoi Hotel, and I took my camera one morning just walking around, and I saw these two cows. Guess what? They followed me back to my hotel, about 30 feet in back of me, for a full block. Wherever I turned, they turned. I went inside my hotel, this glorious 5-star Oberoi that has a huge atrium. They tripped the automatic door opener and walked right inside the lobby. And they wandered around unmolested, unshoed, for a half an hour doing what cows do. Now, can you imagine going into the Palmer House Hotel and seeing two cows in the lobby? Not likely, huh? Okay. Again, one of those strange encounters. An elephant goes to school about 5 years to become a working elephant. The Asian elephants are about 10% smaller overall than the African elephants. Now, I'm with a friend of mine called Laxman Arayan. He and I took off for a few days just wandering by car through central India. This is a a Hindu temple, and this is a Hindu priest naked to the waist. Now, this next photo here is about as close to death as I've ever come. What are we seeing? Okay, you're right. He did charge, by the way. He's called a wild tusker. When you see a herd of elephants, they're all females except for the young males. And these fellas here at a certain age, they come out on their own. They live alone, okay? Now, I'm in a Jeep. This is not a park. This is not a zoo. There's no gates. There's no fences. And he was back here about 300 yards, and we were downwind, so he smelled us. And he raised his trunk, he pawed the ground, and the Jeep driver said he's going to charge. And he turned off the engine. He said, "Don't say a word, Bill. Don't move. Don't do anything. And pray." So this guy's coming at us. We're being charged by an elephant. And honest to God, I thought, this is my last seconds on earth. And we're sitting frozen in the Jeep. And from here to the exit sign, he stopped because he realized we were not going to hurt or harm him, so he trusted us, just kind of wandered away. It was at this point where I took his picture. Back at camp that evening, a Churchillian Englishman of advanced age were telling stories. He said just 2 weeks prior to that event that a family or a group of 4 people, travelers, were in the Jeep. A similar elephant saw them. The elephant charged. The elephant did not stop. And all 4 people were trampled to death in that Jeep. Amazing, amazing. One never knows. Now, we're back in Mumbai. There are a lot of rich people in India. There are a lot of poor people in India. There's certainly a big emerging middle class. These hovels are made of junk they pick up at the junk yard. But they're not the poorest of the poor. You'll find that families will live on streets. They will go to sleep on sidewalks. Mother, kid, father, not even having a pillow or a blanket to take care of them. Now, we're still in Bombay, the Quran says that a woman must cover her body. It does not say how much she must cover. So some very conservative Islamic women cover almost everything except her hands. Okay. This is Nandi the bull, again a sacred cow holiday. And what are these ladies doing? They're going to the stream to do their laundry, aren't they? And they balance their laundry on their heads. Regardless of the economic condition of the women in India, they all have beautiful saris. And I have been to homes of middle-class Indian women who have over 300 saris in their wardrobe. Huh? Hello. Okay. Now from here, we go to Sri Lanka, which is still a Buddha stronghold. This is Sigiriya, a very sacred mountain. And at the base of Sigiriya is this reclining Buddha carved out of the accompanying stone, and from head to toe, he's 100 feet long, carved over 2,000 years ago. This one here is 40 feet tall. When Buddha was 82, he ate some poisonous food. He laid down in this position, and he passed away. So throughout Central Asia and parts of India and in Sri Lanka, you'll find these incredibly carved Buddhas in the reclining position. This is a Buddha deity. You'll notice that he has 7 cobras for his crown. all hooded. These are the Sigiriya damosels. This is cave painting over 1,800 years of age, and the paint is just as beautiful and intense as it was the first day it was actually painted. Now we've come here to Indonesia, the island of Java. We've taken a little bit of a trip here. This is a Hindu temple called Prambanan, 146 feet high, and it was built about 900 AD when the Hindus came through this part of Indonesia. It's incredibly sculpted. Every square inch has some significant Hindu detail. Only 30 miles away is an equally impressive Buddha temple called Borobudur. It's the most visited place anywhere in Indonesia, although Indonesia is the world's largest Islamic state. As you climb up the stairs, symbolically, these figures right here look like this close up. Inside these apertures, the holes is a seated Buddha. The objective is to reach inside, touch the Buddha for good luck. I was able to stretch and do that. And by the way, the Buddhists and the Hindus intermarried at this point. It would be unthinkable to do that today. Okay, now we talked about rice. We're in Indonesia. How is rice produced? Well, it's a difficult process, obviously. First of all, you got to get a rice paddy, you got to flood it, find two obstreperous cows that don't want to be, worked to death. You put here an ancient plow, and you're willing to walk up to your knees in muck. This is how it first begins. Second step, each individual rice plant is put in individually, one by one, into the paddy field by a human being. There's no such thing as John Deere mechanization here. It truly is back-breaking work. Step number 3, the rice grows. It takes several months. It grows to be 2 or 3 feet high. And then when it's time for harvest, in come the harvesters. They separate the wheat from the chaff, literally. So it's quite a process. And what you're seeing here, the island, whoops, okay, yeah, all right. This woman, I just put her in because she's an elderly woman who's going through a fruit stand in Sumatra. But these, the next film right here, which is going to show in the island of Bali, at the end of the rice harvest, and the harvest there, they go to, they take a little 1-mile trip and go to the local Hindu temple. You'll notice here this glorious sculpture of fruit all stuck together with this marvelous crown on top, and where they're visiting would be this marvelous Hindu temple, which has filigree that's well over 1,000 years of age. Most of Bali, by the way, is Hindu, not Muslim. From here, we're going up to Thailand, north of Bangkok. You'll find this marvelous bell-shaped stupa, a Buddha temple, of course, and inside is a seated Buddha covered in pure gold. Notice that his arms and shoulders represent the masculinity of man, although he has a very feminine, dainty waist, representing the synthesis of male and female. These are the fanciful architectural buildings that are part of the palace grounds in Bangkok. By the way, in my opinion, Bangkok is the most, has the world's worst traffic jams. If you think the 294, the Edens, is bad, sometime go to Bangkok. If you're a salesperson, your first call of the day is your last call of the day, because you just can't get from anywhere else. Now, just south of and we're right now in the Indonesia, we're in the peninsula where just below Thailand is Malaysia. And we're here at a Buddha temple in Malaysia. And these big incenses take literally weeks and weeks to burn. Inside this temple is me. Take a look. What do you see? Who are those guys? Those are 2 live poisonous pit vipers. I'm in a Buddha snake temple, and I was encouraged to put them around my neck My faith did not quite extend that far. So they stayed at my knee. This would be food, fast food, Malaysian style. This is a beautiful Chinese pagoda that has an Islamic influence in Penang, one of the islands northwest on the Malaysian peninsula. And we're here now in Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia, in this glorious new mosque. When I went there, I had to take off my shoes, my socks, wash my feet for purification. Only men were permitted inside, no women at all. Now, what's this? This is a part of a fishing village on the Malaysian coast. It's obviously very swampy and very yucky. This is where I caught malaria. And I was very fortunate to walk away from it. It was a terrible disease, and death was knocking at my door about 15 years ago on this one, but I was very fortunate. Now from here, we're going to Singapore, which is the end of the Malay Peninsula. Singapore is about 4 million people. It's a very modern city. It also has the old traditions. And one of the traditions, of course, is this beautiful Hindu temple. Again, all glorified with filigreed sculpture. What you're going to see here is quite interesting. In the Hindu tradition, there's no such thing as sin, but there's karma, good karma and bad karma. And this is a procession by young Hindu men who carry this contraption on their shoulders, is tied to them around their waist, and they will march about 2 or 3 miles. At the end of these strings, are fish hooks. And they're grafted into their bodies. This is mortification of the flesh. This is to expiate their bad karma. And that's not fatal or anything that has long-lasting medical problems. But since I lived in Singapore, I was able to encounter these unique religious traditions. This man here is in a trance. He has a spear both through his lips and through his tongue. Quite unique, quite unique. Okay. Now we've come to the Philippines. We're in Manila right here, huh? One of my favorite cities. They all speak English over there, which is a wonderful thing. The food is great. And not far from Manila is what's called a Pope's Park. A businessman some years ago built a statue of each of the 282 popes. Each statue is unique. It's about 10 feet tall. It covers several acres. It was designed to help him expiate his bad sins and get into heaven. I don't know if he ever made it or not, but it's unique. Incidentally, the Philippines is the only Christian country in Asia, largely Catholic. What you're seeing here is a funeral procession. They're carrying the casket to a local cemetery. These are Filipinos of rather meager means. In the northern Philippines, I encountered this beautiful cathedral, and this young nun is saying her late afternoon prayers, a sensitive encounter. And there's a big born-again tradition in the Philippines, which is taking Filipinos to another religious direction. And what do you think the national sport is in the Philippines? Well, if you're a man, it will be this next figure here, cockfighting. There's a winner and there's a loser, and we're going to stop right here. It's they bet huge sums of money on the outcome. From the Philippines, we could stay here for another hour in the Philippines because I traveled all over, but we have to move on. And we're going now to South Korea. This is a newly minted husband and wife, huh? Beautiful dress she's wearing, but honey, what's happened? Come on, this is the honeymoon. You're just married. Be happy, right? Try to be a little happier. If you're a wealthy South Korean, you can afford to get buried in a tomb of this nature here. And I climbed up 600 stairs to get to this Buddha shrine on the side of a mountain, and water is trickling from the cave top down to the cistern here, and elderly South Koreans will climb. It's quite an arduous trip, it's 60 stories high, to get the water for long life and for good health. What do you think this is? A mountain of cabbage about to become kimchi, that unique South Korean food, which is essentially pickled cabbage. You either love it or you hate it. There's no in between. Yeah, for sure. Now we've come to China, and we're north of Hong Kong, about an hour flight. This is called Guilin. This is the Li River. I'm on a boat right here, and these mountains have been sculpted into these phenomenal contortions by Mother Nature, literally defying gravity in so many ways. I took the Silk Road journey. We're in central China here. These are the Magao Buddha caves. They're carved in the mountain about 1.5 miles horizontally. They're 2,000 years of age, replete with shrines and carvings. China is probably the world's largest museum. And like an iceberg, 9/10 is still submerged. And every few years, some glorious site comes to the surface or is discovered. Now, what are we seeing here? This is a lamasery. A lamasery is where young boys indenture themselves for years to become Buddha monks. And along the way, they learn the values of hard work, of course. And after years of sedulous study, they go to the saffron gowns, where they will then beg for food and for alms the rest of their lives. Wherever there's a god in a religion, there's also devils, of course, the yin and the yang, and these are the Buddha devils of the ghost village right along the Yangtze River. But there are some exotic Buddha gods and deities as well, as represented by this young lady right here. Now, this gentleman right here is David. He's a Buddhist. Let me show you something. You'll find these Buddha shrines from place to place. They're about the size of this table. And you buy 3 incenses, and you light them with the candle. And you bow to the Buddha shrine 3 times as you're saying your prayers. Every Buddha home I've ever been in has its own shrine right inside the home. David was a young man. He was married, has, I think, a couple of children. Here we are. David went to Princeton University, courtesy of the Chinese government, where he got a PhD in theoretical physics. Very intelligent young man. Okay. From here now, we are going to go to northwestern China, the snow belt. These are called yurts. They're rounded tents. And I'm in a car. Here you see the clothes, probably frozen on the clothesline. The western China is primarily populated with Muslim Chinese. They're called Uyghurs, U-Y-G-U-R. And they tend to live in the smaller communities, and those who have very little, financial wealth are forced to travel and transport by a donkey cart, as you see here. They actually look like they're from, Eastern Europe. What do you think this is? Well, this is not a beehive. This is an Islamic cemetery. And it, of course, is air-conditioned. And there's holes here to permit the spirits to fly out and to visit their loved ones from time to time. All right. Now, when was the last time you petted your pet panda, huh? Okay. I climbed in a panda pen against the wishes of, and this is in China, against the wishes of the zookeeper, but I brought in an apple. I fed my panda. He's probably 300 pounds. An apple. I scratched his ears, rubbed his back. He made panda noises, and we had a great time for about a half an hour. I held him and I cuddled him, and of course he does have claws, doesn't he? So if he didn't like me, I would probably be roadkill. But when you stop to think of it, he has white hair. I have white hair. Huh? He has black eyes. I got black eyes. He has black fur. I got dark clothes. He probably thinks I'm his cousin, doesn't he, huh? And I think only 2 zoos in the United States at this point have pandas, if I'm not mistaken, San Diego and Washington, D.C. A unique experience. But don't ask me about my tiger experience, because then you'll think that I cannot tell the truth. That is another experience. Okay. This Islamic mosque right here is undergoing repair, and these are bamboo poles that form the superstructure. The workers climb up and down those poles just like they're monkeys, and they never fall, and they're not tied on to anything either to help the fall. These boys and girls are about the 4th grade. This is our competition. They are studying hard. The teachers are almost deities in China and in Asia in general. They go home with 2 and 3 hours of work with homework every night. Many take piano or violin lessons. They all want to become middle class. They want to live like people in Prospect Heights do, Arlington Heights. Why not? Huh? So China is absorbing so much of the Earth's natural resources. Why shouldn't they have cars? Why shouldn't they have 2,000 square foot homes? And they all want this, and so China is exploding in so many areas. Just wait and watch, sometimes with trepidation. In Hong Kong, where I lived, these are where the boat people live, on sampans like this. These are their homes from birth until death. In fact, not far from my home in Hong Kong was an 18-story apartment building. It was for elderly people. They had to be 70 years of age and poor. It had no elevator. You had to climb the stairs. And if you're on the 18th floor, you had to climb 18 flights of stairs. The people were uniformly in perfect health. The pulmonary system obviously worked very, very well. Now, what you're going to see here is the world's most famous farmer. Because 25 years ago, when he was digging in the ground near Xi'an, which is the eastern terminus of the Silk Road, he discovered the phenomenal terracotta warriors. 8,000 of these soldiers, they're over 2,000 years of age. They all have unique, individualized human features, were there to accompany the emperor and the Han Dynasty to this next life, and they were ready to fight his battles for him. Quite a unique thing. Now, where should we go from here? Where haven't we visited? Japan. I'd love to take you to Japan, but guess what? We're going the other direction. Well, I'd love to take you there, too. I could spend all night. We'd be here until 4 o'clock in the morning. We can only visit 25 countries, but I can take you there another time. Where do you think we are here? Well, I'll tell you what. This is a mountain, right? And this is a nature sculpture right here. This is wind and rain. The eye, right? This is a skull. The nose, the chin, the cranial cavity. The country we are in, of course, is Australia. I had lived in Sydney for a couple of years. It's a glorious city, about 4 million population, and the mountain which you just saw, that sculpture, is Ayers Rock. The official name is Uluru. It's the most famous and sacred place of the Aboriginals there, and it has this red-orange tint to the rock, especially at sunrise and sunset. It turns these magical colors. Wow, watch out, be careful. This is a jumping crocodile. I'm in the 2nd story of a boat. This is a piece of raw meat. They smell it, they float towards the boat, they drop their tails, and they literally snap their tails, and they shoot out of the water, all 25 feet of them, thank you, to snap the meat. Now, these seagoing crocodiles are twice as large as any of the Florida alligators. They can outrun a horse for 100 yards on dry land. Truly killing machines, and awesome. I was happy to take that picture just a few feet away. From here, folks, we're traveling across the South Pacific Ocean, a glorious paradise called Tahiti, French-influenced, and here you see a Catholic church that is well over 150 years of age. We can just spend a moment or two in Tahiti, we'll savor it there, and now we're getting back in the airplane and we're going across the South Pacific, and this time we're landing in Machu Picchu. We are in the mountains, the Andes Mountains of Peru. Machu Picchu is over 600 years of age. It is the home of Pachamama, the Inca Indian goddess. Mysteriously, all the Inca Indians left there Why, how, no one knows for sure. It was rediscovered in 1911 by Hiram Bingham, who is an archaeologist from Yale University, and he encountered this. I mean, this is in such a remote area of the Andes that it went undiscovered for hundreds of years, even with the Spanish conquest. So inside is their sacred Holy of Holies. This is the spot, the navel of the universe. I know I need a haircut, don't I, huh? Okay, we're moving on here. In southern Peru, I'm in a plane taking a picture of the plane just below us right here. We're flying over these incredible geometric shapes called the Nazca lines. Have you heard of the Nazca lines before? Yeah. These are huge geometric figures which are carved into the desert rock floor. Here is the Thunderbird, a half a mile from here to here. You can only see them from the air because they're carved into the ground. So why were they made? What was the symbols? How were they created? When? Who? It's still a mystery. So do you suppose it might be the Martians after all? Just maybe, huh? Okay. This is Christ of the Andes against a stormy sky near Cuzco, which is the entryway to Machu Picchu. In its own way, the Inca Indians created their own Wailing Wall, didn't they, huh? Okay. We are now in the Alto Plano, but somewhere near Lake Titicaca, where it's 13,000 feet. It's a broad expanse of the Andes Mountains. I'm on a train at this point. This Catholic Church services the needs of the local Catholic Indians, but they can also pray to their natural gods, the wind god, the fire god, the water god, the mountain god. So they have it both ways. They will create their natural prayers to the natural gods, but they also buy Christianity for a little bit of fire insurance, just in case they're wrong. Okay. Along the way, you just encountered this beautiful statue shrine of Christ. And guess what? We're back in the good old US of A. Are any of you tree huggers? Well, this was just last summer, as a matter of fact, and good old Bill Helmuth is hugging a sequoia tree, the world's largest, most massive living things ever. The sequoia trees only grow between 5,000 and 7,000 feet altitude on the western slopes of the Sierra Nevada range, or about 200 miles roughly southeast of San Francisco. And this one was a little sapling when Homer started to write the Iliad and the Odyssey, huh? And they are much larger in girth, say, than the coastal redwoods. They add the equivalent of a 60-foot high tree worth of wood every year. They're continuing to grow. Are we back in India? Did I make a wrong turn? Did I go north or west or somewhere? Folks, what are we seeing? We are seeing a glorious Hindu temple called Sri Swaminarayan. It is in Bartlett, Illinois, less than 45 minutes from where you're sitting tonight. And it's one of those temples that, folks, you just simply must see. The glorious architecture was built in India 2 years ago, shipped via container in pieces to Bartlett, and then reconstructed on this land. You can have a meal there. You can have a free guided tour, but to spend 2 or 3 hours, and another world of Hinduism and spirituality will open up to you. No question about that.
What's the name?
Sri Swaminarayan. The best thing to do is to call the Bartlett Chamber of Commerce, say, where is this beautiful Hindu temple? Oh, it's over here, over here. They'll give you a telephone number. You must go. It is that impressive. Okay, now finally, we're back home. You're safe. 25 countries, 6 continents, 30,000 miles. We're back at the, where are we here? The High Temple, of course, in Wilmette, folks. Okay. So one day, when it's time for me to say, I've had enough of the travel, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to find a park bench like this gentleman in Madrid, Spain. I'm going to listen to my Mozart, feed the pigeons, read my Financial Times, and sip my coffee and call it a day. And I sincerely hope that you have enjoyed your journey today. Okay. Thank you very, very much. Okay.